The idea that a fugitive from law or somebody sitting in jail or whose whereabouts are completely unknown being able to continue to cast votes is wrong.
This week in Pennsylvania, a state rep on the lam from authorities in Philadelphia managed to vote on the House floor in Harrisburg. We will explain. The primary election is Tuesday. We'll get you set, including a surprisingly stiff challenge for one of the most powerful Republicans in the Capitol. And U.S. Senate candidate Dave McCormick has no primary challenger Tuesday, but he's trying to topple incumbent Bob Casey in November. He's in the House today and will join us live in just a moment. Hello and welcome to This Week in Pennsylvania. As always, I'm Dennis Owens, covering hot topics in PA policy and politics, as well as the issues that are important to you and your family. Well, it was a bizarre week in the State House as a representative, wanted by police in Philadelphia, managed to have his votes counted in Harrisburg. On Wednesday, Kevin Boyle's whereabouts were unknown, but his votes did turn up on the tally board in the State House.
Is it a ruling of the chair that the gentleman is in fact eligible to vote?
That is the chair's ruling.
I would like to appeal the ruling of the chair, Madam Speaker.
A fight over Philly Democrat Kevin Boyle, who was wanted, according to the Philadelphia DA's office, for violating a PFA and not turning himself in. While on the lam, Boyle was still voting by proxy. That is legal, and he'd been doing so for weeks. And Democrat leaders argued that process should continue. Boyle was the all-important 102nd vote that did come into play Wednesday. Republicans protested that the entire arrangement is absurd.
This is purely, again, political for the Democrats to remain in power, and what they're doing with it is basically causing democracy to die today. I think it's ridiculous.
Democrat members were tight-lipped about their colleague, who has had public mental health issues in the past. Majority Leader Matt Bradford issued statements accusing Republicans of partisan performative politics, adding, "I love Kevin, but I have serious concerns about his mental health, and it breaks my heart to see him this way. I hope he gets the help that he needs." Now, by Thursday, Bradford introduced a resolution to change House rules and create a process to expel members that are deemed unfit to serve. Republican leader Brian Cutler criticized the idea, saying, "We don't need complicated answers to simple problems. We just need to immediately stop Boyle from voting." Everybody gets to vote in Tuesday's primary election. Well, correction. Registered Republicans and registered Democrats can vote. And there's an interesting battle brewing in conservative Lancaster County. That's the first TV campaign ad Brian Cutler has ever done. Cutler, former Speaker and Majority Leader, now Minority Leader, seeking his 10th term in the 100th District. And he has a stiff challenge from small businessman Dave Nisley, who says Cutler is too establishment and he no longer represents his district. Cutler knows it's not just Nisley that's frustrated. Much of the electorate nationwide is unhappy, and sometimes they take it out on incumbents.
It's my job to convince them that we've got a very good record up here. We were able to save money, pay our bills, effectively fight off tax increases by the Democratic governor. And my question is, why would you change that?
The people here, especially in this district, we are very conservative and we love these principles and we want to live them. And we want the state to also advocate for them.
Cutler is heavily funded by the House Republican Campaign Committee and the County Party. Nisley by Citizens Alliance Pennsylvania, a conservative group that last cycle helped Wendy Fink defeat York County Stan Saylor, a longtime incumbent and powerful appropriations chairman. An interesting TV ad in the Democratic race for Attorney General popped up this week. Philly State Rep Jared Solomon proclaiming it's a two-person race between him and Eugene DePasquale. In fact, there are 5 candidates. Solomon says DePasquale, a former state rep and auditor general, is a little too cozy with Republicans on issues like guns, and therefore true Democrats should pick him.
And our polling shows that in every region of the Commonwealth, I'm first or second. So now, at this point, it's choosing time for Democrats. This is a Democratic primary. Those are not our values.
First of all, I don't know if one person from Philadelphia gets to define what the entire Democratic Party of Pennsylvania believes. I've never lost a primary. So I think I've been on the ballot about 6 times in a primary, have won every time. So Democratic voters don't share that view of one person from Philadelphia.
Now, despite what any ad says, there are 5 Democrats running for Attorney General, including Joe Kahn, Keir Bradford Gray, and Jack Stolzheimer. All week, Secretary of State Al Schmidt pushed the message that the primary election will be safe and secure. He highlighted the Election Threats Task Force. It's comprised of federal, state, and local law enforcement, as well as the 67 counties, since they're the ones that actually run elections in PA.
The task force, which I lead, meets regularly, shares information, and coordinates plans to mitigate threats to the election process, protects voters from intimidation, and provides voters with accurate, trusted election information.
Schmidt also stresses if you still have a mail-in ballot, return it in person. Too late to put it in the mail. Also, be sure to sign and completely date the outer envelope, or that vote will not count. President Joe Biden barnstormed the Commonwealth this week with 3 campaign stops in 3 days. On Tuesday, the president made a nostalgic return to the house where he grew up in working-class Scranton. He also channeled a blue-collar message saying the rich should pay higher taxes and suggesting Donald Trump is an out-of-touch elitist. On Wednesday, it was off to Pittsburgh and United Steelworkers trying to shore up the union vote. He promised to do more to protect American steel and shipbuilding industries from what he calls unfair practices. U.S. Steel shareholders approved a sale to Japanese-based Nippon, the deal not yet approved by the Justice Department. Finally, on Thursday, it was the city of brotherly love. Biden in Philadelphia, the motherlode of votes for Democratic candidates. He was endorsed there by several Kennedy family members, a shot at their sibling Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is running as an independent. Biden also called Trump a threat to basic civil rights.
All men and women are created equal in the image of God, deserve to be treated equally throughout their lives. We've never fully lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it. We've never walked away from it. And we're not going to walk away from it now.
Donald Trump expressed frustration that he could not be campaigning in Pennsylvania this week. He's tied to New York City and his criminal trial over hush money payments to a porn star. The Supreme Court has turned away an appeal from a Pennsylvania congressman who violated security at the U.S. Capitol. Republican Lloyd Smucker of Lancaster County was fined $5,000 back in 2021 after avoiding metal detectors while entering the House chamber. They had been installed after the January 6th attack. Smucker and 2 other lawmakers called the fines massive and claimed that the security prevented them from voting. Lawyers for a former Pennsylvania police officer argued his January 6th case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Joseph Fisher worked for the North Cornwall Township Police Department in Lebanon County. He faces criminal charges for taking part in the attack on the U.S. Capitol. He is facing 20 years in prison for obstruction of an official proceeding. His attorneys argued the charge should be dismissed. The justices seem divided. A decision is expected by the end of June. Fisher's case could strongly impact other January 6 criminal cases. Okay, pencils down, laptops up. New rules for thousands of Pennsylvania students come in 2026. State standardized tests are going digital. Governor Shapiro making that announcement this week, saying it will save schools 2 hours of instruction time per year, ensuring more in-class learning. The governor and educators say this isn't a big leap for students who already do so much of their learning online.
Online assessments actually do a better job of matching how they learn. These are going to be questions that students can answer with methods like drag and drop and sorting and ranking answers.
But there are concerns, especially for rural and underfunded districts, which may lack the technology. Shapiro promised the resources to fund it would flow. Stay with us. We have U.S. Senate Republican candidate Dave McCormick in the House. We're going to talk to him after the break.
This PA Chamber Minute is paid for by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry.
Hi, I'm Luke Bernstein, President and CEO of the PA Chamber. Welcome to the PA Chamber Minute. You might be asking yourself, what is a Chamber of Commerce? Simply put, a Chamber of Commerce is an organization made up of businesses that promotes policies to make it easier to start, operate, and grow a business. At the PA Chamber, we're proud to represent nearly 10,000 businesses of all sizes across all industries from every corner of the state. Our mission is simple: make Pennsylvania the best state in the nation to do business. We do this by working with businesses and elected officials to enact policies that will improve the state's economy and help businesses grow right here. If you're a small business interested in joining our movement to make Pennsylvania more competitive, visit pachamber.org.
Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We are joined now by Dave McCormick. He is the Republican U.S. Senate candidate going against incumbent Bob Casey. It's one of the most watched races in the nation. I'm going to make a bold prediction. You're going to win your primary on Tuesday.
For sure.
Of course, you're unopposed.
Yeah.
Bob Casey seeking a fourth six-year term in Washington. He has won 6 times statewide. Mostly referendums elections are mostly referendums on incumbents. Why should voters choose you and not him?
Well, I think the first reason is the country is in deep trouble economically, from a national security perspective, the border, the challenges abroad, spiritually, what's happening on our campuses. So we're in trouble as a country, and I'm a 7th-generation Pennsylvanian, someone who's gone to West Point, served in the military, created jobs in Pennsylvania. I'm someone who's from the outside. Bob Casey is, you say, 30 years in public office, 18 years in the Senate, 98% of the time voted with Joe Biden, and has voted for the excessive spending that's led to inflation, the war on fossil fuels, open border policies, and he's out of touch. And I can tell you this because I go across our Commonwealth, out of touch with the needs of Pennsylvania.
He was here a few weeks ago, Bob Casey, campaigning hard on greedflation and shrinkflation, as he calls it. He blames what he calls greedy corporations for making record profits, charging more, giving less. Yeah. It is a populist message for sure. Do you disagree with it?
Yeah, well, I absolutely disagree in the following sense. Bidenomics, which Bob Casey has supported every step of the way, has been terrible for Pennsylvanians. 60% of Pennsylvanians live paycheck to paycheck. For them, prices have gone up 20% and wages have gone up 14 or 15%. So they're getting squeezed on food, fuel, and rent. And that's the direct consequence of this enormous spending. Republicans and Democrats alike have been spending too much money for decades. But under Joe Biden, it's been a hockey stick. And the war on energy has driven up fuel prices, which is driving inflation.
Are corporations greedy?
Well, listen, I'm not going to sit here and defend any corporation. They're trying to drive profit. So I'm not saying there isn't some corporation that may have changed the size of its packaging. But this is a distraction from the drivers of inflation, which are the terrible policies of Joe Biden, which Bob Casey has supported every step of the way.
You have been a very successful hedge fund manager. You're very wealthy. Democrats seem the attack they're going to take on you is you're too wealthy to relate to average Pennsylvanians. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, listen, I grew up 7th-generation Pennsylvania in rural Pennsylvania in Bloomsburg. Everything I have, I've earned, and it's been the benefit of a great country and a lot of luck. I'm proud of my success. I think we should want all of our kids to be successful. And I've had a life of service. I went to West Point, I served in the military, I served in the government. And so I'm deeply committed to America, and I think my success in business will help me be a better senator.
There continues to be nagging reporting about your residency and background since you just brought that up. A story today in the New York Times, you've claimed to grow up on a farm, quote unquote, humble beginnings, but the fact of the matter is your dad was a college president, you were in residences that were pretty nice. Do you want voters to think you grew up poor? Did you grow up poor?
Well, I've never said I grew up poor. What I said is I had a modest beginning, and that everything that I have, I've earned myself. I was very fortunate. My mom and dad were both public school teachers. My dad went from the public schools to being a professor and ultimately became president of Bloomsburg State College, which is a source of great pride. And I grew up on that campus, but we had a family farm. And I worked in the summers baling hay and trimming Christmas trees, and that's what I've always said.
You mentioned West Point. Why not just say, I've been wildly successful as a hedge fund manager, and that should be lauded, not hidden or kept under wraps?
I agree.
Okay.
No, no, there's nothing about my career or life that I'm not proud of. But the reason I always go to West Point is because duty, honor, country, which you learn at West Point, is the reason that I'm running for the Senate now. It's the same motivation.
We got to take a quick time out. Stay with us. Much more with Dave McCormick after the break. Well, welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We have Republican U.S. Senate candidate Dave McCormick. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I want to start with immigration. It's a topic you are intimately familiar with. Your wife, Dina, is an Egyptian immigrant. As a senator, how would you fix what everybody calls a broken system that, frankly, has not been appropriately dealt with since Reagan?
Yeah, well, listen, if we had all sat in a room here on the day that Joe Biden took office and said, how bad could it get? We never would have imagined it could have gotten this bad. 10 million illegal migrants, 160 people last year that were on the terrorist watch list that were apprehended, 4,000 fentanyl deaths directly tied to the border. This is a crisis of epic proportion. And Bob Casey has been responsible every step of the way. He's voted against border funding. He's voted against.
Give me one or two things you would do to fix it.
Well, the most important thing is apply the executive orders that President Trump used, that Biden could use to close the border. Number two, and this is controversial, I would use the military very selectively to go after the cartels in Mexico.
Put them on the border?
Well, no, I would put them across the border to take out the cartels. The cartels are an enormously significant national security risk. And I want to say this, almost 100,000 Americans last year killed from fentanyl, 4,000 here in Pennsylvania. This is an enormous national security threat. And on legal immigration, as you said, my wife's an immigrant. We need to reform our legal immigration system, and I'd be a strong advocate of that.
Let's talk about abortion, your abortion stance. There's been claims and counterclaims about where you stand. I want you to set the record straight. I'm not going to say anything. Where do you stand when it comes to a woman's right to choose?
Well, I believe it's a states' rights issue. With the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think the decision should be made.
So there shouldn't be a federal law?
Shouldn't be a federal law.
Okay.
I'm opposed to bans. I'm for the three exceptions. I believe, but I'm not for
the three exceptions: rape, incest, life of the mother.
Life of the mother, and I'm not for the extreme position of the Democratic Party and Bob Casey, who has signed a law which said there should be abortion up until the due date. I think we can find common ground on this. Common ground is
Pennsylvania right now is 24 weeks.
Hey, we have a law.
Where are you with that?
Listen, I believe it's a states' rights. We have a law that's been signed by Democrats and Republicans alike, and guess what? The governor who signed it into place, a guy named Casey, right? So we've decided at the state level what it should be for Pennsylvania, and I think that's where the decision should be made.
So no federal rule, no federal law,
no, sir.
Just whatever any state. So you're comfortable with states in the South that have banned it?
Well, listen, I'm comfortable with the idea that this should be not in the courts, but a legislative decision, and I'm comfortable with the fact that the people of Pennsylvania should make their decision.
Last weekend in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump endorsed you. He famously did not endorse you in your last primary run, and he endorsed Mehmet Oz, who won by 900 votes. That endorsement might have cost you that election. What's your relationship with him now?
Well, listen, here's the situation. Last election, he opposed me, as you know. Politics is a contact sport, and I had some contact, but I think President Trump and I both agree that we need to change the leadership in the country. We agree that Pennsylvania is critical to that. I've endorsed him, and I support him in his bid for the
in PA,
president.
is Trump's support of you a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think his support for me certainly helps get out the vote, and I think my support for him will hopefully help him as well.
In his endorsement, Trump said you're a good man and, quote, he's given up a lot, meaning you. He's given up a lot to do this. In retrospect, as you answer tough questions like I'm throwing at you and get the scrutiny that you're getting, is the price too steep?
Well, listen, I believe in America. I've served my country on multiple occasions in the past. I think we're in trouble, and I believe that when elected to the Senate, I can do something about it. So I think these are small sacrifices compared to what so many before us have made, and I'm honored to do it.
Well, we're very happy you joined us today. Thanks very much, Dave McCormick. Good luck to you. Dave McCormick, Republican candidate for Senate. He will win the primary on Tuesday. Don't go anywhere. More on This Week in Pennsylvania. We'll come right back. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. Our analyst, Christopher Nicholas from the Eagle Consulting Group, which we didn't mention last week. Brittany Crampsey of Britt Crampsey Communications. Maybe I'll mention it twice this week.
There you go.
Thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the saga in Harrisburg this week. We had a state rep from Philadelphia. He's wanted by Philadelphia authorities, simultaneously voting on the House floor. Every vote matters for the Democratic majority at the moment. Wrong, right? What do you think?
I think the House Democrats are really taking advantage of Boyle. On the one hand, they say they love him and he needs help. On the other hand, they're allowing him to evade the law so he can keep voting by proxy. If they know where he is, why doesn't someone there call the Philadelphia police and tell him where he is in Harrisburg? And they can get him. And it's no accident, Dennis. All this is coming out the week before Election Day because they're trying to beat him in the primary. He has a contested primary.
Against Sean Doherty, who is the son of sitting Supreme Court Justice Kevin Doherty.
I don't think that the House Dems are harboring a fugitive here. I think that a couple of things can be true. He is a long-serving colleague of theirs. They love him, care about him, want him to get the help he needs, and hopefully turn himself in unharmed. There's also just no process in place for the House to get rid of a member of the body in a situation like this. But House Democratic leadership has taken steps to introduce a process so that leaders can convene and get rid of him. This hasn't happened before. This is not that they are taking advantage of a rule.
Conveniently, a week before the primary, they're now starting the process to get to a rule. They apparently know no bounds about keeping their one-seat majority, so they're letting a guy wanted by the cops, who they know where he is in Harrisburg, vote by proxy.
Who, as we said, has in the past publicly battled mental health issues.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
I don't know if there's anything really convenient about this for anyone, let alone the victim of the PFA violation. So I don't think that this is really a political issue. I think it's a process problem. I think it's a personal problem, and I think it's going to reach a pretty speedy
It's a
conclusion.
House Democratic leadership problem as well.
Well, but also isn't it odd? At the same time they're pushing for his vote to count, they're also trying to push him out of the chamber because House Democratic Campaign Committee gave some $82,000 to Sean
It's a
Dockey.
competitive seat. It used to be held by the former House Speaker, John Prezell, the Republican House Speaker. So it can be competitive in the fall, and they don't want him as an albatross. They want yet another Doherty.
And as we go over the talking points, we should point out we do wish him the best and hope things work out
Absolutely.
there on that
Absolutely.
front. Let's talk about Brian Cutler. Now, this guy has been an amazing success. Came in at 30. He's going for his 10th term, which would be 20 years. He's now minority leader, has been majority leader, been Speaker of the House, and apparently in Lancaster County, he's got quite the challenge on his hand from a guy named Dave Nisley. What do you make of that?
There is a small faction, but well-funded, of the conservative GOP who does not like House Republican leaders because they think they're selling out to the Democrats' various budget ideas, which I don't think is correct, but that's what they think. So they had, they took out the House of Propes Republican chairman 2 years ago, and now they're going after Cutler. What I find odd about his opponent, Nisley, somehow is conservative enough for all those groups, but he managed to get himself a C from the NRA. I don't know how those two things mesh.
He's also getting text message support, I believe, from House Democrats.
Of course.
Which is it.
Well, you know what? I don't think either of them are ever going to be truly branded as a progressive, but this fringe of the Republican Party has also taken out moderate or even right of moderate
Well, last
Senate
cycle, Stan
Republicans.
Saylor, who was the appropriations chair a long time ago, Wendy Fink beat him.
Yeah.
Stan Saylor, you had Randy Volakovich out west in the Senate. You had Pat Brown, the powerful appropriations chairman, taken out as well. They don't seem to care about Republicans amassing power. They are ideological purists, and they're moving these caucuses so far to the right that they're becoming uncompetitive in general elections.
People should know that Democrats have the same problem. You've had a lot of challenges in Pittsburgh of the traditional Democrats by folks from the Squad and the progressive side. So both parties are having that, just in different parts of the state.
10 seconds. What are you looking for on a primary?
Oh, boy. I think